Alright, before we get started, people have been asking about the Pokemon remixes that they hear in my videos, where they can find them. What I do is either at the beginning of the video, I'll show the video's title and what channel it's on so you can look it up yourself. And if I don't do that, it's because I'm using my background music playlist, which is publicly available on my channel. You just go there, you go to the playlist section, it's there. And whatever you heard, then it will be somewhere in there. So, happy hunting. Today, we are going over my top 5 favorite World Cup replays of all time, because after the SPL replays video, then people were going, can you do this for World Cup? And I was like, sure, because that's a great idea. So, like with the SPL video, then I'm not going over any battles from a long time ago that only exist in text log form, which shatters my heart, but it's out of necessity. And I'm not going over anything that I have featured on the channel before, even if it's from years and years ago. So I'll leave links to these in the description that I'm about to show. So like this is a good one, this, and this is one of my favorites of all time. I love this one. So yeah, with that in mind, let's get to number 5. So Poic versus C-duma. Poic of Team Spain, C-duma of Team France. So at this time, this was for World Cup 2017, Poic was one of the most feared players. He had won the official ladder tournament in Oris and was having a lot of success in early Sun and Moon. He was in the very deep throes of the official Smogon tournament, and he was just in his prime, in his zone, whatever you want to call it. So C-duma, on the other hand, now we know him as one of the most feared Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon players with incredible records and a very meticulous, thorough playing style. But at the time of this battle, he was just some new guy on Team France. And that's part of why I love this battle, because this was where he showed that he was not just another random player, he was a force to be reckoned with. So there's that, and also the fact that this battle has some of my favorite dynamics in Pokemon, and two teams with a bunch of threats, and they have to make the most out of their threats while dancing around the opponents. So Greninja reveals itself to... So this is Sun and Moon, by the way, not Ultra Sun and Moon. So Greninja reveals itself to be Protein with U-turn, so probably Scarf. But that doesn't mean that C-duma's team is lacking in power, because he's got a Mega Charizard, a Zygarde, and a Tapu Lele. So while Scarf Greninja can still be a threat, it's still obviously not a breaker on the level of, say, Ash Greninja or Z Protean Greninja. So its threat lies more in the fast U-turn, the speed. So he's still not lacking in power because of the strength of those three other guys. But that's something to keep in mind, and Tapu Lele comes in. Both players have Tapu Lele. Lele is a threat to both sides because it's impossible to wall. So we have already established that dynamic, and how is Poic going to play around it? Well, Ferrothorn staves it off decently at full. It takes some prediction to get around. C-duma just plays it safe to begin with, and gets in his Charizard on Lele. Charizard doesn't mind that one-on-one if it's Y, and it is, and here comes Toxapex as we get the wonderful color of Sun and Psychic Terrain at the same time. I love that. So, the thing about this matchup is that one of C-duma's main breakers is totally neutered because he has a Zard Y and Poic has a Toxapex, so nothing doing. But that's the synergy of Zard Y plus Lele because Toxapex is entry for it. So C-duma tries to, he shows that he's not afraid of, he's not going to just tunnel vision and make the obvious move every time. He sees if Poic might try to go to Tyranitar there, either predicting a Zapdos switch or just, trying to catch Charizard on a Solar Beam or something. I think the Zapdos switch part was more likely, but Poic just goes for Scald, keeps it healthy, and there go the hazards, as Zapdos can defog on Pex, and also Ferrothorn, because thanks to pressure, it PP stalls Stealth Rock, so unlike the usual matchup where Stealth Rock has more PP than defog, then here it is flipped. So, and Poic does not have a pressure user to do the same to Zapdos. So, here's T-Tar and Zapdos. Zapdos is going to want to get out of there, and Poic reveals himself to have a third threat of his own because the T-Tar is choice banned. So he's got his Lele, he's got his Zam, probably Mega, in Psychic Terrain, which is terrifying, both because of the power boost and because it neuters priority attempts at it. but also because his T-Tar is banded. So C-duma's breaking power lies in his Lele, and his Zygarde, whose set is undetermined. Now, the Lando on Poke's end has to be very bulky, because otherwise it's going to fold to repeated 1,000 arrows. So T-Tar gets out of there, in comes Pharaoh, in comes C-duma's Megazard Y, which is going to draw in the Toxapex, and where do we go from there? Pex comes in, he's just fire blasting away, does a ton of damage because of crit, but he doesn't double the Lele, he just gets it in safely. And now, how is he going to make progress with it? So Ferrothorn comes in again. Now, after a couple rounds of Psyshocks and Rocks, then it might be in range of an all-out pummeling, probably is. And Poke makes a great move and burns the all-out pummeling, wastes it, if you will. So now we've got Moonblast Wars, because neither team wants to really switch into it. I guess you could say that, yeah, because C-duma's Ferrothorn is at 65, Rocks Up, doesn't want to be coming in, so he has no choice but to just Moonblast it, which at least will bring down Poek's Lele, and he suffers an unfortunate Moonblast drop. So whereas Poek was doing 53 to Lele, then C-duma winds up only doing 36 in return. That really hurts, because Defog is going to get pulled off almost inevitably, and both Leles are going to be healthy, and that can, or even without with Rocks Up, then that can affect how many more turns the Lele gets to threaten C-duma's team. Say, against Zapdos, or against Ferrothorn in a one-on-one if Poek plays it aggressively, or just U-turns with Landorus. So, with or without Rocks, that is a crucial drop. And now it's not sure, is it a speed tie, is it a Scarf Lele? Very well could be, because he probably wants bulk on the Lando, so he would be running Scarf Lele to really ensure himself against Zygarde sets. So it wasn't a speed tie, he's just got to get out of there. And Poek goes to his Ferrothorn, C-duma figures, alright, now I know it's Scarf and I'm not risking switching into a Focus Blast or HP Fire, and I'm going to go to my own Ferrothorn. And I don't think the HP Fire or Focus Blast was likely, because Poek just needed to attack what's in front of him, but Poek, or C-duma could have gone to Pharaoh, but he also wanted to bring down the Lele that was such a threat to him. So, especially because if it's Scarf, then that's another late game threat, because he can't out-offense it with Zygarde or Charizard Y, because Lele would go from just another fast Zygarde wouldn't, but Zard Y, sorry, I'm mixing up my speed tiers, but Zygarde would lose to it regardless, but Zard Y will not be able to out-offense Lele late game and can just get picked off. So, limiting the opportunity it has to come in and out throughout the game is really crucial, because the late game stretch is going to be tough, and they're going to have to be tough switches made to stay alive. So both Ferrothorns knock each other off, and now they're really crippled, so they're really not checking each other's Leles. But C-duma doesn't love that, because his Ferrothorn, now the Scarf Lele is really a huge threat, and there's the Zam on top of that. And, he can't exactly switch into CB-Tar too comfortably anymore. Not that he ever did to begin with, but it's even less comfortable now. So, here comes the Sand on the Defog. But on the bright side, then the Ferrothorn being weak is one less thing for Zygarde to have to deal with. Might help with Greninja if he can somehow break past the Toxapex. Then Greninja is a major threat. It's just breaking past that Toxapex. And it's definitely not checking Ferrothorn, or Lele anymore. So, I mean, it's still looking tough because of Poex's Toxapex and friends just standing in the way, and C-duma's team, already chipped. So, he's got to take a big hit with his CB Zygarde, which he doesn't love doing, but he's got no choice. Fires off his own 1,000 arrows, and that looks to be a banded 1,000 arrows, but a very bulky lefty's Landorus, so it's going to take a while before it really gets chipped. So, Zard Y comes in, and it's either a Pex or a Zam is coming in. Or so you'd think, but Poke decides to go to T-Tar, get some Sand Chip on the Zard Y. Smart move, because Zam or Lele, I mean, they're strong, but Zard Y has huge natural Speed F, so you don't really know, you don't really appreciate just how much chip you need on something like Zard Y to clean up on it until you actually put in that scenario. So I think it's very riskless to just get that free 6%. It was really nice. especially because most players, new players in particular, are going to freeze up and they're going to go, well, I don't know, is he trying to CB pursuit my Zard? I'll just stay in and go for Focus Blast. And C-duma does not do that. He knows Poick is just chipping him with sand, and he gets his Lele in on the Toxapex switch. That was really beautifully done. Now, Poick is not ready to sack just yet. He knows he can take one hit with his Zam, and so C-duma gets a big Psyshock off, and not quite enough, though. So the obvious move for Poick here is Psychic, because it'll take Lele out, it'll take Zygarde out, Ferrothorn's not taking it, these two aren't taking it, and Greninja switching in is risky. So C-duma figures he's just going to sack his Zygarde, because he can't even extreme speed because of Psychic Terrain, and turns out that Poick goes for a Shadow Ball, not Mega Evolving because he doesn't need the power yet, or the speed. Actually, he'll never need the speed because he's going to outrun everything besides Greninja, irregardless. He'll want the power. But for now, he wants to keep Magic Guard so he's not getting chipped by his own T-Tar Sand. So he goes for Shadow Ball, specifically so he takes out the Lele, nothing else wants to switch in, but also so that if Greninja switches in, it will take damage in addition to Sand. So that might also be crucial with Hazards and Sand later in the game. So heads up move, I think he expected C-duma to just switch right to Greninja, but he didn't want to Focus Blast against the Lele and potentially lose his Zam for nothing, so he picked that route. And C-duma just goes to Zygarde, doesn't get KO'd, but he can't Psychic Terrain, or can't Extreme Speed because of Psychic Terrain. So now he's going to go to Greninja, eat the Shadow Ball, and Sandstorm runs out, so he ends up just eating the Shadow Ball instead of eating Shadow Ball plus Sand. Who knows if that's going to work out, but for now, we've got a free U-turn on the Pex, and instead of going to Lele, C-duma makes another heads-up move and goes to Zygarde, because Lele is still ripe for threatening the opponent, for sure. But what the problem is that it's at 21%, 21.7, and if Poick decides to get switchy, let's say, he's going to start switching around with his T-Tar and on the Psychic or Psyshock he's immune to, and then Toxapex on Focus Blast, and he just sand stalls it, and potentially Lele might not do anything. So what C-duma wants to do is soften up the opposing team first before making his final stand with Lele, let's say. So he guarantees that it's likelier that it does something and cleans up the opposing team to a point where something like Zapdos might be able to just stand in the way of everything. Or, if he gets Toxapex somehow, then Zard Y would go nuts, Scarf Greninja would go nuts, that kind of thing. So he notices that Zygarde is less valuable because, he just tried to sack it to Zam. So he figured, you know what, now I'm going to try and soften up the opposing team with this fairly expendable Pokemon, and I'm going to see what I can get out of it, and then I'm going to go use Lele, because Lele is his main tool for breaking through Poick's team. And, Lando doesn't love taking 1,000 arrows over the course of the game, even if it's bulky with leftovers. But the thing is that with C-duma's Zygarde already being so weakened, then it's not going to get a million opportunities this game to keep attacking it over and over, because, it was forced to switch into a CB-Tar Crunch. So, but now he's got the free 1,000 arrows, and Lando comes in, takes another one, and he's still very much out of range. And last time C-duma went to Megazard, so that would just bring Toxapex or Zam in again for more. So this time C-duma switches up and goes to Ferrothorn and gets Iron Barbs on the Lando. And that was really smart because he recognized Ferrothorn's not so useful. So at least if I'm going to give him a free switch to Zam to pick something else, at least I'm going to get Iron Barbs out of it. So that was really, really intelligent. And that might mean that Zygarde might just get somewhere after all if it gets another opportunity on Pex, like off a Greninja U-turn. So here comes Ferrothorn, and C-duma fears rocks a lot more than Poick does, so he goes to Zapdos just to deny it. And here comes T-Tar on the Defog once again. So in comes Ferrothorn, one more Iron Barbs, chipping the T-Tar just a little bit. So now Zygarde comes back in, and with Lando weakened, then it's in trouble, because it is definitely in range of 1,000 arrows, and then it reveals Protect, so that's its source of recovery. And Protect Lando was a great set, but it's just too weak. That Iron Barbs really made the difference. That was just a wonderful play. And Zygarde is going to actually take the Lando out with the useless crit there. So C-duma has even the score at 5-5. Of course, now he's going to probably lose another Pokemon because, I mean, look, it's tough because his only Moonblast resist, his only Pokemon that does not die to 2 Moonblasts, 1 to 2 Moonblast rather, is Zard Y. And does he really want to throw Zard Y away to Psychic? He goes to Greninja, and Poa goes for Psychic. And, you know, Smogtours went absolutely wild. And that was the kind of ballsy move you just would not expect. Because I think the thinking from Poick was that, you know, why would I Moonblast into Zard Y or just let Zard Y come in so Toxapex comes in and then he doubles to Lele or, you know, maybe even Zygarde again and kills more of my stuff. No, I just want a Psychic and prevent that from happening. So, I mean, I hope C-duma sees this and offers his insight on that move because it was just so ballsy. Experienced players would have trouble making that move. The best players around would have a ton of trouble making that move, and that's part of why C-duma was who he was. And he stepped away from the game in recent times, but I have a ton of respect for how he played. He was an absolute monster. And that move just summed it all up. So now he's completely, instead of being on the back foot and having to scramble back, he's taken the momentum back. He U-turns again. Here comes Zygarde once more from, you know, ready to sack it to just tearing through the team. Because now he's forced to sack another Pokemon, Ferrothorn. So now the Lele, when it does come in, is going to be danger. So now C-duma sacks his own Lele and figures, alright, well, what's the plan? Am I going for, you know, he doesn't go to Greninja on a second Psychic. That would just be lunacy. Because he very well could have just gone for the Focus Blast there. But, yeah, it wasn't like versus the Lele, where I think with the Quad Resist and Lele's good special defense, it actually probably would have lived. So now he gets another U-turn off. Poke is forced to go to Greninja, and you know, Zygarde, or go to Toxapex, and Zygarde comes in again and KOs yet another Pokemon. So Lele comes in, now here comes the Zard Y, it drops the Psychic, but Greninja's going to U-turn once more, goes to Lele, and now, you know, something's dropping. It's either T-Tar barely lives and Zygarde comes in and kills again, or Zam gets sacked. So here comes the T-Tar, and right now, you just discharge it a couple times, or just once, and Zygarde KO, and then Lele cleans up. Or, sorry, Greninja cleans up. So, and look at that, he needed, I think that switch, he realized he needed to make such a ballsy move. I mean, if he switched to Zard Y on Moonblast, he could potentially achieve something similar, but it would have been a lot tougher. So, major props to C-duma, and, you know, Poke was an immensely skilled opponent, so to pull that off in such a setting against such an opponent, massive respect, and that is why this game is on this list. So I hope he weighs in and has more to offer than I did, but for the most part I thought this game was great. And of course that Iron Barb switch on Lando, that was just gorgeous. So moving on, here is a game from 2016. This is Oris OU. And this is between Flaming Victini of Team US East and K12 the Mad Sheen of Team Spain. So, the scenario, this was the semifinals, I believe, in 2016. And East was within one game of losing, so if Flaming Victini lost this game, then, you know, season over. And what does he do? He brings a Cobalion, which is not at all part of Oris, to a World Cup, you know, elimination game for all intents and purposes. So everyone's kind of going yikes, and he's facing ABR Stall, which was a very popular team around this time. So everyone's just thinking, why is he throwing away the season with, you know, but, you know, why else would this game be on this list if something amazing didn't happen? So here comes the Sableye leadoff, the obligatory. Well, he still has Prankster on the turn of Mega Evolves because of Gen 6 mechanics. So he gets a burn off on Rotom, and FV shows what this game's all about, which is just chipping the Sableye and wearing it down and grabbing momentum and slowly, systematically disassembling the opposing defensive core. So here comes the Cobalion, which, you know, who knows what this thing is running. It runs sub, okay, and then Focus Blast, and it 2 KOs the Quagsire, and lo and behold, a substitute special attacking Cobalion is a threat to Oris's most definitive stall team. Yikes. So, Quagsire is getting 2 KO'd, and in comes T-Tar on, I think he assumed like a Chansey switch, which was weird because it's a Focus Blast, but Chansey's really bulky and Cobalion doesn't have a very high special attack stat, so I think that's what he assumed. So, but he gets the T-Tar in, and he gets up rocks with Sableye already chipped and not wanting to deal with attacks or, you know, because who knows if it's Choice Banded or not. And not going to switch into that and dealing with sand and whatnot. So T-Tar is great here because it throws it. It's not easy to deny the rocks, and the sand rubbed into everything can go a long, long way. You don't really fully appreciate just how dangerous permanent sand is until you start playing metagames without it. So the Chansey Softboil is trying to scout the Choice Banded attack, and in comes the Skarmory, the defogger of the team, and FV keeps up momentum with Rotom because Rotom does not seem like the kind of thing that cuts through stall, but boy does it irritate the hell out of it because it just burns everything and volt switches, and with rocks and, you know, rocks and sand, then good lord, because Quagsire doesn't want to switch in, Amoonguss doesn't want to take a burn, Chansey switching in doesn't even have lefties, rocks, sand, volt switch, maybe even a burn, yikes. So Rotom is actually a major, major pain here. So Amoonguss gets burned. That can be irritating later because that means throughout the course of the game then it's going to be compromised in dealing with Rotom. Rotom doesn't even mind being burned that much because slowly losing health can actually be beneficial, so that it can further annoy the opponent with Paint Split, especially when dealing with Pokemon with such high HP stats like Chansey and Amoonguss. So, yeah, he's really doing well. He goes to his own Amoonguss to block a Spore, Sand runs out, and with Machine's Amoonguss weakened, then FV just does not let his foot off the gas. Sableye comes in, he's just going back to T-Tar, getting up the sand over and over, not risking a Spore because K-12 was not going for a Spore there, but he just rubs in the sand with the rocks up, knowing that whether Chansey comes in or Sableye comes in, then it's going to really put K-12 more and more on the back foot. And this kind of stall team was so relentless that you really could not ever ease up against it. And this is, FV is doing just a tremendous job of not giving K-12 any breathing room. And FV was always a little bit of an underrated player, and I think, but he was incredibly smart. And this game is a fantastic example of why. So he goes for the Stone Edge, seeing if he can take the Sableye out, because even just burning recovers, you know, not fun. So Stone Edge, because eventually in the long term he's not going to be able to maintain that. So here comes Skarmory, and I'm not sure why FV didn't just go to Rotom on the roost there. Instead he just goes to Zam on the defog. You know, I thought Rotom was a better move there, but I hope FV sees this too and weighs in. So here comes Alakazam, which is his own threat because it's a Mega Zam, clearly, because the T-Tar is not Megaing. And that does not get trapped by Weavile. Of course, Sableye does wall Zam pretty nicely, but the whole point is that Sableye is getting chipped at, you know, and it's not going to last, and even Chansey can falter in the face of Calm Mind Focus Blast from Mega Zam. So that's what he's working toward. That's the end game he's got. So back to T-Tar on the Force Chansey or Sableye, getting and not even making a great move, not wanting the rocks bounce back toward him, but chipping the Chansey. Realize that was more important. He can threaten the rocks all game, but if he can wear down the Chansey with a nice pursuit on the switch, that is wonderful. And Sableye is at half health, so he's not going to be getting, not going to be blocking Stealth Rock at all. So now we can just stay in and get those rocks up, and he's going to keep them up. And in the long term, he is going to out PP the Defog with Stealth Rock. But for now, he decides to go to Cobalion and gets up a Calm Mind. So he's running a sub-Combine Cobalion. K-12 finally applies pressure of his own, and then absorbs a Focus Blast with Amoonguss because it looks like, we're not entirely sure on the damage, but because we don't know the Cobalion spread or the Quagsire spread. It's probably max defense Quagsire, but, you know, we don't know. And so if he gets another turn of lefties, he might be out of range of Focus Blast. So if he comes in on a sub or something, then... But, you know, we don't know. Actually, he's at 57 now, and how much did the first Focus Blast do? It did 55, so it just, you know, we don't know. But it misses either way, and Quag recovers up. So, amazingly, sub-Calm Mind Cobalion is being a pain right now. So Rotom comes back in on the Quagsire, you know, even likes being burned because that means it can't be toxic. So Volt Switch once again, in comes Lando, threatening a knockoff on the Chansey, and, you know, that little bit of chip, it kept sticking. He could have gone to T-Tar, but he just got even more on. He got T-Tar back in, or he threatened even further with his Scarf Lando. Scarf Lando threatening stall. I really love when a team comes together to break through defensive cores. You know, even Pokemon that aren't great on their own when they are used in tandem, like the Amoonguss earlier, that was great in conjunction with the Rotom, and now the Scarf Lando in conjunction with everything else. So if K-12 wants to keep his spikes, he's going to have to concede FV Stealth Rock. So this is why Spike's Defog Scarm is awesome, by the way. So yeah, he eats a Crunch, and then Quagsire comes in. And FV does go for the knockoff this time, recognizing, look, Lando is not the most important thing here. Eats a crit Scald, but not a burn Scald. And, you know, if we can remove the Quagsire's lefties, that can go a long way. Suddenly it can't, you know, pivot into rocks and heal them off and be out of range of, you know, Focus Blast from Cobalion. So now FV makes a curious move and goes to T-Tar, eating spikes instead of Rotom right away. But I think the idea was he was expecting a recover from the Quagsire and wanted Sand to be up for when Rotom comes back in. I'm not sure that was 100% necessary, but no, it's what he chose. So he goes to Weavile instead because Chansey and Amoonguss are so chipped that he just cannot go to them. And Rotom gets... Effie makes a great move. He does not just go for the straight Hydro Pump, which would have been the only scenario in which Weavile can actually potentially remove Rotom from the game with Choice Band and Pursuit on a switch out. So he doesn't fall for that. He just keeps trucking with the Volt Switch. And here comes the Lando, and with that chip and Sand and Stealth Rock, he goes to his Scarf Lando, not wanting to risk anything else. Like we said, the Lando's not so valuable. The only way Weavile beats it is if it locks into Ice Shard, and that removes it from the game because T-Tar will Pursuit it, and you know, now it stands no chance against Zam. So, you know, no Sand anymore unless K-12 defogs for him, but you know, no foot off the gas. Now he has a chance for a big paint split with Rotom, and you know, even with Chansey at low HP, that's going to be a lot. But he doesn't even go for that. He keeps the momentum up. Here comes Cobalion once again, actually threatening to sweep through the stall team, and it misses once again because Focus Blast is just the devil. So now he's going to Calm Mind and, you know, hopefully get some substitute. I think that was unnecessary, in case he expected a Soft Boiled or something, but now he just goes right for it, and from that HP, it's not even doing 50, but it's going to 2-hit KO because Chansey's lack of lefties can bite it. So, yeah, what's he at Focus Blast now? Yeah, he's only got 2 now, and, but, yeah, he's just going to Flash Cannon, not give Quagsire a free switch-in. Down goes that, and at this point, you know, he still doesn't sacrifice the Cobalion, whereas a lot of players would. He goes to Amoonguss, he makes the most out of it, and he forces the Quagsire out. In comes Zam, and he Calm Minds, and now it looks like that might be the game, because how much does it do to Quagsire? Not nearly enough. Quagsire doesn't even threaten it with EQ in return, because Mega Zam gets a small but significant defense boost upon Mega Evolving. Chansey's in range, beautifully done. Not even giving it a chance to Soft Boiled with Rotom. Now we see why he Volt Switched earlier. And Sableye can Fake Out once, but it's not enough, and at this point it's, you know, going to be a game anyway, but good God, I love this battle. That was just gritty and intelligent and measured and systematic and a whole bunch of other good adjectives, and the stakes too, the absolute cojones to just do what he did. Yikes, so massive props to FV for that one. So, yeah, moving on. Next up, we have Pyrite Town. Perfect, because this next battle is advanced. So this is from World Cup 2017. This is between M Dragon of Spain and Coffee of Italy. I just realized that all three of our battles so far have had a Spanish player in them. Coincidence. Anyway, so M Dragon was the clear favorite in this because he's one of the greatest advanced players of all time, and Coffee is known for being good at advance, but no one was really expecting him to beat M Dragon. And what resulted was interesting. So we've got a T-Tar versus Zapdos lead matchup, and Coffee's not messing around. He's going right for a banded focus punch. He's not going to sit on his laurels. He's not just going to say, oh, I'll play it safe, I'll rock slide. No, he goes right for the aggressive move and lands a huge focus punch on a Metagross, which reveals itself to be leftover, so there's no chance that M Dragon can say, okay, I lost a lot of HP on my Metagross, but now I just auto Choice Band Explode and take even Skarmory out, so I'll get something out of my Metagross even though it was weakened so much. He doesn't have that because it's a lefty's Gross. He does not have that power to cut through even normal resists with Explosion. So, big first turn for Coffee, setting the tone. And now he goes to his Suicune. Even if Metagross goes down, then I'm imagining that he's going to have something that enjoys a weakened Metagross. So, in comes Suicune on a Meteor Mash. M Dragon just trying to... He's not going to boom immediately against a healthy team when he's not a Choice Band Gross, because he's, can just thud against a Skarmory. So what he's going to do instead is just go for a mash and get some lefties, slowly but surely. He gets lefties as on the first turn and on the second turn as he attacks, so slowly but surely he might be able to inch his Metagross back to health. But Suicune comes in and it is faster than... Doesn't take a ton from mash, 13%. So, but the Metagross took a ton from Focus Punch, so I think what we can assume from this is that it's like a slow, mixed Metagross. So max HP, still taking a ton from Banded Focus Punch, and that's why it's not doing so much with Mash. I mean, this is just head calcs, but I think it's reasonable. Not doing very much with Mash, both because it doesn't have a lot of investment and because the Suicune is bold, and even bold Suicune will easily outspeed a slow max HP mixed Metagross. So let's see if I'm correct. I realize that this game is old, but I don't remember this game that well that I can recall M Dragon's Metagross set. So, he makes a nice double switch to Jirachi, not letting Skarmory or something like Zapdos come in for free. Zapdos is the bigger target, but so that was another nice move on Coffee's end, because even if Skarmory comes in, he can chip at it with Fire Punch, and that can be useful later on, so it can no longer stop Suicune. And instead of just fizzling away with Fire Punch, potentially thudding into T-Tar, he goes to Claydol, trying to get some momentum, trying to spin. And this was at the peak of Toxic Skarm's powers, and this is where Refresh Claydol was... This was around the time that Refresh Claydol was starting to, be everywhere, so it doesn't break through Skarmory at all. I realize I say that as he gets a Psychic Drop, but it will sit on it all day, so... And it obviously doesn't mind Gengar too much, and it can break past Pursuit Tar. So it was something that Skarm teams had to take into account. Even though, Refresh Claydol was kind of sucky outside of that matchup because of no explosion, but at the time, Skarm was dangerous, and that's why Refresh Claydol happened. So M Dragon makes a great move. He goes to Metagross on the required spin, because even in Skarm matchups, Claydol is required to go for such moves. So he uses it to get some lefties on Metagross. And Coffee makes a great move. He knows M Dragon's going back to Skarm because Claydol does give Skarm a lot of lefties. So instead of just staying in an EQing and giving Skarm a free switch and potentially losing PP he doesn't, he decides to go back on the offensive, goes back to Jirachi, lands another Fire Punch on the Skarm, slowly wearing it down, and back to Claydol on another... Whoa, I forgot he made that move. So... Back to Claydol on another Protect, and instead of just going for the safe move and Psychic and spinning, then he just goes right for a Psychic, and M Dragon tries to catch him off guard, but he gets met with a Psychic, and Gengar at full health. The only way it's taking Claydol down is with Destiny Bond. So, yeah, now he's got to risk a Hypnosis, and Hypnosis is a terrible move. So there's not even a guarantee that he wouldn't have just woken up the next turn. So. Yeah, M Dragon's in a rough spot. As Claydol, and I mean, to Coffee's credit, he's wielding the Claydol and its surrounding partners really nicely. So, M-Dragon's got to try and force him into a certain sequence of moves, but the problem with Claydol, with Scarm versus this Claydol set, is that if you're not prepared for it, then, forcing it into that sequence of moves doesn't really do anything. And he's, maybe trying to PP stall Rapid Spin with pressure, but I think it's a little too late. So, because you really got to be doing that from the start. So I think if he had taken another approach, it could have gone another way. But Coffee is not just using some super passive stall team that never dies. He's got two big Calm Minding threats. Well, the Jirachi might not necessarily Calm Mind, but it could very feasibly Calm Mind, instead of being a Wish Protect pure support set. So he's using Claydol to improve the survivability of these two pokes, and the Jirachi is almost surely going to have Wish, whether it's Calm Mind or support, so he's taken a really interesting approach to, this style of team Coffee is using was almost non-existent. I'm not saying he jump-started a new playstyle or anything, but he took a very innovative approach to the metagame at the time, and it's paying dividends against one of the best players ever in a setting with huge stakes. So I think this was a quarter or semifinals battle. Oh, it must have been quarters. Yeah, it was quarters. But they knew they needed the win, and he stepped up. He didn't just go for the standard team and try to outplay. He decided to push the envelope. So he switches to Jirachi on the Zapdos' forced Toxic or HP Grass, and it reveals to have Psychic or T-Wave as well, so no BP stuff. Psychic does a pretty fair chunk, so it's safe to say it's probably an offensive Zapdos, so no special defensive rest stuff. So it can be irritating to deal with, but there's the Wish, and Psychic and Wish also means it's almost surely going to be, Calm Mind in the last slot. So he wishes up. He doesn't have anything to wish to because his whole team is healthy. He was just wishing because he needed to stay healthy for Zapdos. And now he's got a free CB Tar in, and he makes another great move. So before we get into the whole Dugtrio of it all, that was a great move on Coffee's end because he figured, okay, M-Dragon can't, now that the Blissey is in on T-Tar one-on-one, and it's the T-Tar is the T-Tar is slower and parried, then the Blissey can feasibly stay in and go for Seismic Toss to make sure that the T-Tar doesn't go for Focus Punch, right? So it can shrug off one Rock Slide, it can heal up later. Coffee's got a bunch of weak Pokemon that Blissey heals up on all day, so he can Seismic Toss, he can chip the T-Tar a little bit, and he can withstand a Rock Slide and prevent him from going for Focus Punch. And so and thus, knowing that, then M-Dragon switches to Metagross because he thinks, alright, well, I'm just going to absorb that Rock Slide because the Rock Slide is the safe move for Coffee in this scenario. So Coffee reads that, and instead of letting Metagross come in for free on that seemingly required Rock Slide, and letting Metagross potentially blow up his Suicune, because now it's not as likely that Coffee has a Skarmory. He's running a more balanced approach, centered on Calm Mind and survivability. Not that he couldn't have a Skarmory, but it's likelier that he doesn't. So, and of course he knows if he has a Skarmory or not. So he doesn't want Metagross coming in and blowing up his Suicune unnecessarily. So he does not. He makes a really tough to make move and Focus Punches and removes the Metagross. So yeah, Dugtrio is going to come in now and take out the T-Tar because it's locked in a Focus Punch. But he prevented the Metagross from blowing up his Suicune, and that was incredibly worthwhile. And so, M-Dragon made a good move there. I mean, he can't really risk Blissey, especially with so much of Coffee's team unrevealed. It's dangerous. But that was really nicely done on Coffee's end. I give him massive, massive props for that. And what comes in? Porygon 2, which is also completely unexpected. So he figured, look, if you're going to Dug my CB Tar, then you're not going to have a Dug for my Wish Calm Mind Rachi later. And a lot of stall teams do rely on Dugtrio to deal with Wish Calm Mind Rachi. So I think what we saw there was either a weirdly EVP2 or a surprise Adamant Dugtrio, or both, because it actually ends up not getting 2 KO'd by EQ, so that kind of sucks. It's generally safer to just PP stall Earthquakes, because Dugtrio needs to double crit you within 3 turns or something. And so, it needs to do that within 15 Earthquakes, so it's extremely unlikely. I think the odds are better than, Ice Beam. Someone could run them on that, but historically, I know a lot of great players have used that tactic to success, so, yeah, that's generally the safer move, but now the Dugtrio is still actually alive, but, we don't know. He's still got a very bulky Jirachi, which is going to probably take it at full health, and the Dugtrio has been chipped, so it's not like Dugtrio can come up short on Jirachi and still live the return Psychic, or even the +1 Psychic. So, he's also got a massively dangerous Suicune, of course, with Toxic to boot. So that's another innovative set because it completely it forces other Suicunes to rest and helps pressure Blissey because now Blissey has to switch out and something else has to take the Surf. And, Skarmory getting chipped down, we already know that, and Zapdos wouldn't want to do that. So here comes Claydol again, really making sure M-Dragon's never getting anywhere with the spikes. So now we've got a semi-dangerous situation with Paras and the threat of Dugtrio because of the whole P2 gaff. So Claydol switching in, trying to force a, a soft-boiled on an Earthquake, but Blissey, M-Dragon just keeps Seismic Tossing. Nice move. He was looking more for the Jirachi, and there ends up being a Heracross, so talk about full P2 abuse with Dugtrio removed. So CB-Tar alongside P2, and then following it up with Wish Calm Mind, Jirachi, and Heracross. Teams, Pokemon that stall teams rely on Doug for, and then the whole Claydol alive, or keeping Claydol alive thing with Refresh and Wish and the bold Suicune to top it all off. I really, really like it. So now, of course, Heracross is a major, major threat, and he doesn't bother going for Mega Horn or Focus Punch. He goes for Rock Slide, knowing that it's going to hit Zapdos hard, and he's in no rush against the Skarmory. Matter of fact, the Skarmory gives Claydol extra lefties. He likes that. So it turns out it's a very fast Heracross too, probably Jolly, and it's a slower offensive Zapdos, around 270. I'm not a fan of Jolly Heracross, but I get it. So Coffee decides not to give the Dugtrio the second kill and to go to Claydol, which now actually threatens Zapdos with death. So, and now he makes an even ballsier move, because you would think, oh, well, why not just go to Skarmory and get your health? And he figured, well, he made the right move, because if Skarmory comes in, you're not really hurting it anyway. But if Blissey comes in, you're actually pressuring it. Now it's in, a crit range from EQ, and you're forcing soft builds from it. I mean, long game, but still. And it's just giving you health. So, and, crit a little too late. But now he gets Heracross in for free, and Claydol pretty much is at the health it started out with. And Heracross comes in again. And now, of course, it's going to KO Zapdos and get Dugged in return. So, kind of a gaff. But the thing is, it took out Zapdos to begin with. So, Suicune and Jirachi both looking like massive threats at this point, especially the Suicune. So, yeah, he's Wish Calm Minding in Blissey's face, and despite Paras, he's actually going to Wish and get parried a lot, and get some spikes, because that's the only way he can really pressure the team. But at this point, he's just struggling to break through the Jirachi, and the Suicune on its own pretty much wins, barring insane Dugtrio luck. So, he's just going for Fire Punch Burns to make it easier for him, so he doesn't have to manually attack the Blissey to actually bring it down. So, he wishes up, and still out of range. Fire Punch Burn, so now we can actually wish and heal without, and the Blissey's still taking damage. That was the idea. So M-Dragon's desperately switching around, but he's not going to have a million soft boileds or a million seismic tosses. He's only got 10 tosses left, so he's got to, pull off some sort of, unholy luck chain, and even that won't be enough in theory, because, yeah, so that's definitely an Adamant Dug doing that much to the thing, but, yeah, and now, yeah, Coffee said in the chat it was Rest Suicune, so, yeah, he gets the win, so that was a really wonderfully executed game and high stakes by Coffee, so massive props to him for that one. For all the reasons we have just gone over. So, yeah, I also like M-Dragon's team. It's unusual, but it's got a lot of strengths to it. Anyway, so moving on to Gen 4. This is our number 2 game. This is McMegan versus Jirachi, 2016. This was also just a round 1 game, but it's one of my favorite DPP games ever. So we'll get into why with the battle. So lead off with Jirachi against Infernape. So we don't at this time then in the metagame the special attacking Jirachi sets are still in vogue with Akaberry, Stealth Rock, Psychic. So Infernape doesn't really want to stay in on it. Lead ape sets are usually Band or Scarf. At this point, Stealth Rock sets are super dead because they just thud against Starmie. Not that you can't make good use out of such an Infernape set, but you're generally not going to. You're going to use Infernape later in the game, where it's most deadly. So we see a U-turn from the Infernape, which does not do very much, and since at this point bulky Jirachis in the lead slot are not really a thing, then we're going to assume that it's just a Scarf Infernape. So as opposed to a Band Infernape not doing a lot to a defensive Jirachi, it's a Scarf Infernape not doing a lot to an offensive Jirachi. So Clefable comes in and Jirachi U-turns itself, so Scarf Jirachi, and Clef comes in. And do we have the calc open? Yes, we do. So Jirachi, Choice Scarf versus Clef. At this point in the metagame, Clef's niche was not fully defined, so people were kind of going back and forth between support and Calm Mind, and neither was in recent years, then the support set was everywhere, and then Calm Mind was having a resurgence earlier this year, in 2020, and so it wasn't really, but Clefable as a whole was not everywhere, so the U-turn did 21%, so it looks like it's a support Clefable, as you see from that calc, because a Calm Mind Clefable, I mean, some players also use Spadef Calm Mind Clefable, but we know that either way it's Spadef, and a Bold Clefable would be taking 17 max, so we know that it is a plus special defense natured Clefable. So here comes T-Tar, we don't know Stealth Rock, Choice Band, what? And McMegan goes to Nidoqueen, also not fully established in the metagame at this point, especially not Nido-Clef. And Jirachi just goes for a Stone Edge, which does a ton and reveals the T-Tar to be banded. So he was looking for something like a Skarmory, because if you were expecting something like a Swampert or a Hippowdon, you would go for a Crunch. But he was looking to smack a Skarmory and got met with a Nidoqueen instead, so now he's going to have to deal with hazards. And what comes in? Breloom, the bane of defensive teams. Its role has altered throughout the metagame, but at this point, then the set everyone was running was Spore, Mach Punch, Seed Bomb, Superpower, which is a timeless set. It's always going to be dangerous with the right support. So he's going to sleep something, and he's going to have to make full use of that, especially because even if he's got a Starmie, then Starmie's going to get spiked or T-spiked because it didn't come in there. So it's going to get poisoned and has to deal with the potential Ghosts and Scarf Tar, and with the combination of Scarf Infernape alongside Nido-Clef, you're not really sure what McMegan is running, because if it was just a standard defensive team with Nido-Clef, you would be able to more thoroughly assume, okay, Rotom, Jirachi, T-Tar, Skarmory, whatever. But with the Scarf Infernape, you're kind of thinking, alright, well, I can't be as sure about it. So this is where unusual picks and team building give you an advantage. And that's why why good players can make use of them so well, because suddenly their opponent does not know as much about their team. So either way, sleeping Nidoqueen is always useful, and it's going to be backed up by Skarmory almost surely. So he goes for Jirachi goes to Heatran expecting the Skarmory, but McMegan makes a nice move. He stays in. He says, I'm not fearing Breloom Seed Bomb. I'm healthy. So I can just use Roar, an underrated Nidoqueen move, and scout the team. Maybe I can drag in the T-Tar, make it take poison damage, and it'll switch out, and I can keep racking up and scout the opposing team. So I can, what McMegan's doing here is looking for both information and looking to get, just rack up damage on Jirachi's team. And, if Jirachi's running offense, which it very much looks like he is, then Scarf Infernape is a massive threat, especially when the opposing team is cleaned up. So Jirachi comes back in again. He doesn't know if it's going to trick or U-turn or what. So he just U-turns, and in comes Breloom again, and in comes a Kingdra. So we don't know what set this is, if it's Rain Dance or DD or Specs. And the thing is, you don't want to I mean, in theory you could use Protect, and if you're expecting DD, because if you're backed up by Scarm, then Scarm's going to wall it either way. But you don't want to give it a free Rain Dance, so protecting here is not always the smartest idea. So, but he just switches right to Clefable, and Jirachi makes a fantastic move. Instead of just going for the attacks, then he knows what he has to do. Earlier, that idea he had where Breloom would go to Heatran against a potential Scarm switching so he could fire off attacks or get up rocks, then depending on if he has rocks or not on the Heatran, then because he could also have them on Jirachi. Unlikely, but possibilities. So he has the same idea here. He's just gonna find his advantage, and he's going to get that not by just attacking what's in front of him and hoping that he has the power to break through. He's going to find his opportunities and capitalize on them rather than just go blasting and seeing what happens and hoping it works. So he's got Breloom in on Clef now instead of on Nidoqueen, so he's not pressured to Spore. Like against Nidoqueen, you don't want to Seed Bomb and take a hit necessarily. So now Nidoqueen comes in, and we don't know what set it has. It shows Earth Power, and it's faster than Breloom, meaning it's a bold Nidoqueen. And so that by bold instead of relaxed. Bold because it's taking very little from Seed Bomb, therefore not Spadef, because it's Fizdef. So instead of running a Earthquake and then Ice Beam, then it's Earth Power and Ice Beam, so that means bold, because you don't need to not weaken your Earthquake. So you get the bonus of that is that you get a pretty good speed stat naturally, because 188 is gonna be faster than a lot of things, including most bulky Breloom, like you see Jirachi's here. So you naturally outspeed a ton of Scarbs. So the last move could be like Protect or Ice Beam or Flamethrower is more likely. But he goes for Earth Power, looking to... I think he might not have had Ice Beam if he was just going for Earth Power. But yeah, maybe the move instead of Earth Power there was Roar, because that means he's already burned a Sleep Turn as he gets Spored. So because now his sleep counter resets, and Jirachi's gonna patter away with Seed Bomb, break him down, see how much he can chip it, and then that means Breloom can be a threat later in the game, because he's going to get more opportunities against Clefable, because Clefable looks to be McMegan's counter to Heatran at this point. So now, Nidoqueen's not waking up, he's at low health, Breloom's a massive threat, but Skarmory comes in, so McMegan decides to litter the field with spikes as opposed to going looking for more information. He's got 5 Pokemon revealed, and Kingdra's already taken some nice chips, so he decides he's going to want to accentuate that with spikes to wear down the Breloom as well. So playing the long game, I agree with that move, of course, because some players would say, well, you can't give the Heatran opportunities, you got to keep being aggressive, but long term it's going to pay off, especially because he's going to be looking to clean up with Scarf Ape. So Clef comes in, Heatran gets rocks. So are the rocks on this Clef? We're not sure, but here comes the CB Tar. Now Protect on Clefable is not a thing at this point, so you don't have to worry about it scouting the CB Tar's intentions. But here's the thing, what that means is that it can very feasibly pursue the Clef, and then Kingdra and Heatran especially go nuts. So he does not pursue, he just goes for a Stone Edge and takes out the Nidoqueen. And actually that was a really smart move, because instead of focusing on a pursuit versus, a switch versus stay scenario versus Clefable, he went for the Stone Edge. And that was really smart, because not only if Clef stays in, you rock it, but Skarmory obviously can't come in, and the Pokemon that stopped you from spamming Stone Edge earlier, Nidoqueen, is weakened and asleep. So if he goes to anything else, it's probably going to get rocked. And if Nidoqueen switches in and gets sacrificed, then Sleep Clause is no longer active. Breloom can spore something else when it comes in on Clefable next time. So that was a move of really great foresight on Jirachi's end, not getting caught up in the smaller predictions and instead seeing the bigger picture. So that was really, really well done. I want to emphasize that. So now McMegan can launch a counter attack with his Scarf and Fernape, and Jirachi reveals his Gengar in the last slot. So very offensive team, very dangerous. And Gengar, no Black Sludge here. It's going to be all-out Life Orb. We don't know if Sub-Split or something else, but either way, then McMegan's not going to enjoy switching into it. So Jirachi makes the obligatory move of leading off with Focus Blast to ward off a Scarf Tyranitar, and McMegan makes a great move by going to Starmie to abuse this. That was a move that really showed just how much foresight, or not foresight, but like the metagame insight that he had at that point. Now, it's not super likely to see Scarf Infernape and Scarf Tar, but it was a good move, not just because of that, but because to break through specially defensive Skarmory, which was still the standard at this time, then Gengar needs to Focus Blast it on the switch, otherwise it's getting stalled out. So, knowing that Jirachi was not just going to Shadow Ball into Skarm or T-Tar uselessly, then he goes to Starmie, and now Starmie does not KO Gengar back without Psychic, but Psychic was picking up Interaction on Starmie just to handle Gengar one-on-one, to KO all Breelooms, to pressure Roserade, which usually spikes on bulky Starmie. So, even if he doesn't have it, he can at least feasibly pretend like he has it. And he takes Sand first, so he's not running a bold Starmie, so that was a really great move from McMegan. Now, Gengar is going to get out of there, and in comes Kingdra, and just eats a Hydro Pump. Now, see, Psychic would have been nice there. Not sure quite, well, probably would have been enough, honestly. But he doesn't want a Psychic, well, no, because he can, I don't know, I guess he doesn't want a Psychic into the Scarf Jirachi, because T-Tar is nearly dead, too. But I guess if you miss Hydro on the switch against T-Tar, then at least you have another opportunity. And he knows Jirachi's not going to risk it, so Hydro was the better move overall. And thus, nicely done on Jirachi's end. Instead of just letting his Jirachi get blasted and doing nothing with U-turn in return, then he's going to get something out of it with Kingdra. Actually, Psychic might still KO from this point, so he might just, he might just say, no, the Starmie needs Thunderbolt, I think, because he's really afraid of Gyarados, because he's got the Clef and the Spadef Skarm, so he needs an answer to that. So, correct move on Jirachi's end. I like that. He could have had Psychic, but it was less likely. So, because right now he hasn't shown a Gyara counter, and the last is almost surely going to be a Ghost or a Tyranitar to assist in the Spikes game in some way, like Ghost to block spin or Tyranitar to remove the Starmie trying to spin. So, he goes to the Kingdra, he scares the Starmie out, and he makes a double switch to Breloom. Beautiful. So he was not banking on no Psychic, or he was not, he was really banking on no Psychic, or, he was just very, I wouldn't say banking, like, lull time to roll the dice, but more he was very confident that he did not have Psychic, and that was for a good reason. Because he recognized from the team structure that, this team gets completely rocked by Gyarados. It's going to come in on Nidoqueen and Clefable, and, Spadef Skarm's not an answer, and you can't just revenge kill it with Infernape, and, Rotom doesn't even want to switch, and he's going to have something. He can't just have his Starmie be fodder for Dragon Dances. So, T-Bolt, or at least T-Wave. So, anyway, so he knows he doesn't want to predict Draco versus Hydro if he's got a especially offensive Kingdra, and if he's DD, then he doesn't want to just flail against Skarm. So he makes the right move. He knows McMegan's got to get out of there. He can't risk a Starmie just dropping to a Draco Meteor and being lost for almost nothing. So Jirachi makes another great move and doubles to Breloom, and now again he's in the driver's seat because Sleep Clause is no longer active. He can Spore, or he can just Superpower and preserve the Spore yet again, because look, that's exactly what he does. Because he can go for the Superpower, and Starmie doesn't want to switch in, God no, and then he can, because of Natural Cure, and either way, he can just go for the Superpower safely, and then he's still going to get a Spore off later, so Breloom's going to just keep putting him up a Pokemon and then some. So he goes for the Superpower, McMegan tries to absorb it with T-Tar, and it just drops. So now Breloom's going to come in again later on and do the same thing against Clefable once more. Now, it's 6-4 Jirachi, but with T-Tar almost dead and Kingdra almost dead, then it's a lot closer than we think. So all he's got to do, though, at this point, because of the stellar early game, is make sure he doesn't wind up losing to the Starmie, which would be surprising because it's almost certainly going to have Thunderbolt, or like Reflect or something, but something that deals with Gyarados, so T-Bolt, Reflect, T-Wave. Or, so he's got to pretty much just pivot around the moves Infernape's locking itself into. Like, if he fire moves a Gengar, then he's going to go to Heatran and then nuke something in return. Or, well, I mean, that's actually the problem, because he doesn't necessarily get something out of the Clefable. He doesn't want to throw the Heatran away, he doesn't want to blow up on it, and Infernape can double switch as Breloom comes back in. But as long as he's wearing down the Infernape too, with rocks and sand, then it might eventually fall into Mach Punch range for Breloom. So, McMegan's in a tough spot. Jirachi really did not let his foot off the gas, which is exactly what he needed to. And he makes a nice move U-turning so he does not take extra sand damage, because he was going to be forced out after this turn anyway. So he did not want to take sand damage on top of the Stealth Rock damage he's going to have to take next time he comes in anyway. And since Jirachi has 2 weakened Pokemon in Kingdra and T-Tar, one of those was getting sacked, so he doesn't have to worry about... You know, it was unlikely that he was going to throw away a perfectly good Gengar. So now Skarmory comes in because it forces in Jirachi's Heatran, because he doesn't want to risk the Skarmory being faster and Brave Birding his Breloom, because we've already established that his Breloom is very slow since it was slower than Nidoqueen. So in comes Clef and eats a Fire Blast for a little under half. And, you know, if the standard Stealth Rocking offensive Heatran set is Pasho with HP Grass, so Starmie doesn't want to come in on it, it'll just get destroyed, so it's really just Clef or bust. And Clef means Breloom comes back, and McMegan can double to Infernape, but, you know, he either soft wields or he doubles to Infernape. He's trying to wear it down with Seismic Toss and, you know, spikes and sand, limiting its Poison Heal recovery, but it's just not enough, because Spore takes out one thing and then it's threatening to KO another thing. And, you know, it's going to happen over and over, and now Clefable is going to struggle to switch into Heatran next time. So, he can Spore again, he can Superpower again, and he does go for Superpower again, knowing nothing else wants to come into it, and he weakens the Skarm, so... And now there's no way to see if Leftovers or Poison Heal Pokemon is faster. He's not risking it. He goes to Heatran. Great move. So, McMegan keeps himself alive with a Roost. Whereas most players probably would have been, well, I gotta hope I'm faster and I'm gonna scare him out, or he's gonna stay in and die to Brave Bird. And then he actually would have had a chance. Barely, but he would have had one, because Starmie is actually a threat in conjunction with the Scarf Infernape if the Breloom goes down. So props to Jirachi for not, you know, rolling the dice and keeping Skarmory around, or keeping Breloom around. So Heatran comes in again, and since Clefable chipped the Breloom, then is not able to switch in anymore. And that's the catch-22. If it used Soft Boiled, then it was not going to pressure Breloom at all, so it would just be coming in on Clefable all day long. So here comes, you know, a desperate attempt to handle the Heatran, like hoping that it doesn't have HP Grass, but it does, and there's the Pasho. And now he doesn't want to lose Heatran necessarily, because Skarmory might actually be a pain, depending on his Jirachi and Gengar sets. Like if it has Trick, obviously it's not a problem, and you know, if Gengar is offensive with HP Fire or Thunderbolt, then it would struggle against that too, especially T-Bolt. But yeah, so T-Tar's... Oh, he goes right to Gengar right now. And no, he goes right for a U-turn, not even going for a fire move. So I thought Jirachi was just going to sack T-Tar, but you know what? That's an even nicer move than I realized, because he realized, look, McMegan's not trying to get his Infernape worn down any more than he has to, and last time he went for the U-turn on the Kingdra sack, so he's probably going to do something similar, since T-Tar is such an obvious sacrifice. So instead he's going to go to his Gengar, and he's going to go to his Gengar and preserve the T-Tar to get sacked later. Especially since even if Gengar does die to a fire move, it's not that valuable, so he can afford to lose it. And then Heatran comes in and Fire Blast will 2 a KO something, and you know, he can do this over and over, and he'll almost certainly win the game. So that was a really, really nice move. Especially because Infernape's getting worn down more and more, and eventually Breloom Mach is going to pick it off, so it's not like he needs Gengar at all costs to ward off close combat. So that was a really smart move. So now he's going to sack or not even sack the T-Tar. He uses the T-Tar to switch in so Heatran doesn't get worn down by spikes, because even if McMegan lays down 2 more layers of spikes, is not going to KO the Heatran, so he's got to try to phase it out as it comes in, rather. and Jirachi's not biting, so great use of the T-Tar. Preserving the T-Tar against the Infernape sack. Instead of sacking T-Tar to Infernape, using it to sack against, to get Heatran in more safely. So here comes Jirachi. We don't know if it's got Trick or not. He's just going to U-turn, and McMegan can't afford to really scout at this point. And he's going to get up another layer of spikes as T-Tar comes in. And Heatran is not going to be able to switch in again after this. And he shows that, so he's going to 2-KO the Clef, but then Infernape's going to chase it out. And thus, McMegan makes the right move, preserving his Skarmory, because it's still anyone's game. Fire Blast takes Clefable out, and here comes the Infernape, and he goes for close combat. And, what's the move? Is he going to get actually soloed by the Skarmory? No, he goes for the Focus Blast just in case. He tried to switch him, but McMegan knows he's got to do the 1v3 here. And he shows himself to be Pain Split Gengar, so that helps a little. Not one-on-one necessarily, but it definitely will help. And Focus Blast does a ton, so he's not an entirely Split F Skarmory. And here comes the Breloom. And so, moment of truth, is there any reason to not risk it? He goes for the Spore, and he's going to almost surely take the Skarmory out, because he's going to, even if McMegan wakes up here, he has to roost or he dies, and then he gets Spored again, and it's looking like that's the game, and he doesn't wake up, and Jirachi takes it home. So that was a wonderful, wonderful game. I really liked it. One of my favorite DPPs of all time, so major props to both players. So before we get to our number one, then here's another CTC honorary mention. This is from World Cup 2013. Don't be fooled by the sprites. It's still, or the models rather. It's still from when Black and White was the current generation. So this was US East versus France in quarterfinals, and he's facing Ojama, or the goalback guy. And if CTC wins this game, then US East goes on to the semis. So what's interesting, besides Ojama's nicknames, is that he's using a Scarf Lando, because at this point then everyone was using Sheer Force Lando. We're not going to go over this game too thoroughly because it is an honorary mention, but he's using Scarf Lando at a time where everyone was using Sheer Force with Life Orb, so that was interesting. And CTC was using that Sand Offense style that he was so powerful at wielding, with the offensive Stealth Arc Jirachi and even the surprise pick in Slowking, where most people were content to slap a Latios, and we'll see why. So he gets the Spore off because Black and White Sleep is broken, and I'm glad it's banned. So he's going to fire off a brutal Focus Punch. It's Sash, not even Life Orb, or Fighting Gem, like CTC like to run. And so the Breloom the Lando comes in on the second Focus Punch instead of Latias, because he knows that Latias is going to get pursued. So now here comes Rotom. So Jirachi goes for Energy Ball, another CTC/Hugo innovation. God, I miss those guys. Specifically because, Grass Knot is great against Jellicent and hits Gastrodon pretty well, but Energy Ball hits Rotom, because Rotom is very light. So he gets the rocks, and he's chipping the Rotom. I mean, not a lot, but rocks are going to stay, and now he knows he has to switch out. And, what's he going to answer it with? With Skarmory sleeping and pretty much dead, and Hippowdon forced to heal, because that Energy Ball is a surprising chunk. So he's going to sack... So he's going to go to Keldeo on the Skarmory, so he doesn't invite a free switch for Terrakion, because Terrakion can come in on Jirachi for a free KO, but it's not as free if it's against Keldeo. So he just stays in, goes for a Secret Sword against Rotom, bringing it down, bringing it into Keldeo and Landorus range. So the Scarf Lando is a threat, but he's just going to sack the Jirachi, not risk his own Lando or anything. And now here comes the Terrakion. So here comes Slowking and Psyshock, so bypasses Terrakion's Split F boost. So he just gets up the rocks, and CTC pulls out Trick Room. So Trick Room offensive Slowking. What a poke. And the only check, with Rotom chipped at this point, the only check he has is Latias, which is of course massive T-Tar bait. So he Psyshocks just in case Ojama double switched to Terrakion, trying to beat the CB Tar. Of course, with Trick Room up, then T-Tar would beat Terrakion one-on-one. And, yeah, so now he just goes to it, and it's a Life Orb Latios, which is just totally destroyed by Tyranitar. Here comes Tarak, and CTC risks it. He knows that the track is not setting up on the T-Tar because it's not guaranteed that it's... I think that Latios switched because... Yeah, it switched because it would have been faster. So, yes, it switched and died on the switch to Pursuit. So he knows that it wasn't... Is this still... Yeah, keep playing. Come on. So he knows that it is, not choice banded. He doesn't know that it's choice banded, and in that vein, maybe he should have stayed in to find out. But he sacks Keldeo rather than letting it grab a Swords Dance potentially, which could be the game. And yeah, I guess in theory, if it Swords Dances there, then Keldeo can still win a tie. So that was a great move on CTC's end. And now here comes Tyranitar, which winds up being Scarfed. So it is a track check in his own right. So if he Swords Danced, because if he Rock Polished, then he's not killing Lando. And if he Swords Danced, then T-Tar revenges it. And there's also the Keldeo tie. So never count CTC out. I forgot how popular Scarf Tar was on offense these days. So yeah, he now goes to Lando. And with Sand Force, then Stone Edge cleaves right through it. And he dodges it, but CTC is using Special Lando, so he Earth Powers just so Terrakion doesn't come in and set up, because what he wants is to go to his Slowking, and I believe he sets up Trick Room? Yeah, he sets up Trick Room, and now there's no chance because Psyshock will take it out because it's offensive. So yeah, he just wanted to make sure Slowking got in safely and cleaned up with Trick Room, so... I know CTC messes around and likes to joke, but in his prime, he was a vicious player, and this was a huge win for US East, launching him to the semifinals against one of the greatest players of all time. So, yeah, nostalgia trip. July 10th, 2013, how time flies. Yeah, alright, and our final game, our number one, is Brofist versus X-Ray for the World Cup 2016, August 10th, 2016, the tiebreaker. US East versus Germany. So this game was not the decider, but it was a tiebreak game, but that's not really important. So I could have gone with any number of Brofist games because he's just incredible. I know Blunder in particular loves Brofist versus Reiku, which was the semifinals tiebreaker from the same World Cup, so you can go look that up. I think Blunder's already covered it somewhere on his channel, but even just the replay, it's just masterful. But I wanted to go over this game because I love it as well. So here's... Here, the matchup is interesting because Mega Manectric was a rare sight at this point in Oris because, bulkier teams were tougher to deal with, and Mega Manectric has, nothing to do against Fable Hippowdon Armadas. But against offensive teams, it's scary as hell, and he's got Talonflame, which is almost definitely bulky, a good defensive core, two Bisharps, major threats. So the thing about X-Ray's double Intimidate core is while it's nice against a lot of offense, it doesn't do anything against Bisharp because of Defiant. So Brofist is running a Team TDK made, which is similar to CBB's old Hyper Offense team, but with Rotom Wash over Greninja, and I think that was a really great pick that I'm not sure CBB messed around. I know he messed around with a lot of like Pinsir and stuff, but I don't remember Rotom as much. So yeah, either way, it's a fierce style, two great teams, so let's get into it. So Latios lead off against Manectric. Manectric is a fairly safe lead off against this kind of team because against Rotom is a very obvious lead, so you just get your Mega off so you can Intimidate on switch-ins later. You can Volt Switch out of it. So thanks to Mega Mechanics, then Manectric starts out at 339 speed even on the turn it Mega Evolves in Oris, whereas, if it stays in here, it's just going to get Draco Meteored into Oblivion. So he's going to have to hard switch out of there. And Brofist makes a great move and goes for a Surf. So that was not, you might think, well, if he has HP Fire, which was very common around this time, Draco Surf HP Fire, then why wouldn't he HP Fire to hit Ferrothorn? And the answer is because Spadef Talonflame can shrug off a Draco and Roost. And, the less you have to switch into that thing's Will-O-Wisps, I mean, I know Rotom is a great pivot against it, but the less, the better. Plus, Surfing first might, also hits Manectric harder, but it also might make... X-Ray think that he doesn't have HP Fire, and HP Fire doesn't KO Bisharp on the switch either, so I like that Surf. And now, of course, is the question of do you stay in or not? Because Sucker Punch, I mean, it's weird because Sucker Punch is so obvious, and it makes X-Ray fall so far behind if he just Sucker Punches, as Brofist makes the safe move of going to Garchomp, because this Bisharp is not going to be pursued. It's going to be Swords Dance, like all of them are, because that's the best set. So it's going, not that you can't use Pursue Bisharp, I think it has a niche, but by and large, on a team like this, you're probably going to be going for Swords Dance. So in that sense, then Sucker Punch is so obvious that you almost can't use it, because Garchomp comes in and gets a Brox, and you're like, well, I'm behind as hell. And then you go to your own Lando, and then Rotom comes in, and rocks her up, and Volt Switch, and it's ugly. So you almost don't want to let it get to that point to begin with. So in that sense, Brofist can read it and just go for an attack. But no, he just goes for the safe Garchomp, and now he goes for the rocks. X-Ray was terrified of switching into the Latios because of its potential coverage, so he just goes for the safe Sucker Punch, and now Lando does come in, and rocks do go up, and X-Ray hates that a lot because he's got a Talonflame. And Lando comes in, and X-Ray tries to absorb the Will-O-Wisp or Hydro Pump with Starmie just to get the spin off, because he's thinking, once I get Talonflame in, then it'll all be okay, because it will... it'll just wisp everything. It can roost off Hydro Pumps like Gliscor does, not as well because it doesn't have Poison Heal recovery and it just has lefties, but it's a similar idea. And he just didn't want to get Ferrothorn burned because he really needs Ferrothorn healthy to stand up to the Latios Assault, because he can't do that Bisharp thing anymore. He can't actually switch into it. So he needs Ferrothorn to be as healthy as possible to withstand an HP Fire. And Brofist reads it, he plays it safe, he Volt Switches, no need to burn the Ferrothorn, we can just Volt Switch on it. And now here comes Scarf Lando to threaten the Starmie out. Free U-turn with rocks up, and Brofist makes a really great move. He knows that Lando is coming in to absorb the U-turn and chip it with Rocky Helmet, so he doesn't need the U-turn chip on Lando. Who needs that? And he could definitely do without the Rocky Helmet chip on his own Lando. So he just cleanly double switches. U-turn is safe and easy, but not worth it, so he makes the tougher move and gets rewarded for it. And now he's got his big threat back in. That was the main purpose. Obviously Latios was coming back in on Lando with rocks up now, but because Latios is the big threat, so he's got to do that as much as he can, but he didn't need U-turn to do it, and he is rewarded with not losing extra Rocky Helmet chip on his own Lando. So that was a really great move. So Latios is also important because Manectric is a huge threat to his team, because once Rotom gets shipped, then he's got Lando to scarf it, but Garchomp, HP Ice, Scizor, Bullet Punch, so it's a threat. So if he can help it, he likes to keep Latios out of HP Ice range, but at the same time, then he's also got to go on the offensive. This is a big threat. So he's got the Surf, ready to be served up. He knows Landorus isn't staying in, and he just HP Fires and nails the Ferrothorn, because Draco or Surf into HP Fire wasn't happening, but this time he gets it. So great move, Ferrothorn protecting for any bit of lefties it can get. And you can't roost because you don't know that the Ferrothorn has Protect. I mean, it's common, but you can't just assume it like that. So now Starmie comes in on the HP Fire. Great move by X-Ray. So the thing is that he can't spin right here because then he'll die to Rough Skin. And thus he'll die to Rough Skin and he won't get the spin off. So rocks will remain up permanently. So he's got to recover. But of course, then if he recovers and Latios just stays in and Draco meteors it, then he also loses rocks. So he's kind of in a rough spot right now because he's, either he recovers and Latios Dracos and he doesn't get rocks off, or he spins as Garchomp comes in and he doesn't get rocks off. So either way, it's rough, and you don't know. Is he gonna recover? Is he gonna spin? So Brofist just goes to Garchomp. I don't know if it's Sash or Lum. Maybe he just wanted to keep Latios a little healthier. Although with rocks up at, it's in Mega Manectric range, so I personally think he could have gone for the Draco. I think that was fairly riskless. And he wasn't really letting in anything after. But he goes to Garchomp and Starmie recovers and gets a spin, and he gets a Swords Dance, so Starmie's definitely not keeping the rocks off against him. And it would have pressured a Lando switch nicely too, which... not necessarily going to get anywhere with Manectric, but yeah. So, with Scizor because of Manectric, but Yeah, so Starmie goes down, and he's going to preserve the Garchomp to get rocks back up later, which is very feasible given all the faster Pokemon. Since he's faster than 3 of X-Ray's other Pokemon, so he goes to Scizor, and just to as a sack, just to get some Bullet Punch chip on Manectric. And X-Ray makes a great move, a really tough move, and goes for Flamethrower, so he doesn't get chipped by the Bullet Punch. I think he was more aiming for Bisharp, whose Sucker Punch actually stings, but Brofist is not risking that. Bisharp, the Pokemon that is a massive threat, and gets boosts from X-Ray's own Intimidators. So there's that much, and Scizor goes down, and now here comes the Lando. And, we've got that whole U-turn thing. Is he going to risk it? Isn't he going to risk it? Now he's going to actually go for the U-turn because that at least lets him see if Manectric stays in. And even if Manectric does stay in, he'll at least have chipped it, which will make it easier for Bisharp or Rotom to... It'll put it in KO range for them more easily. So he takes the Rocky Helmet chip, fine. He goes to Garchomp, getting the rocks up. That's also big for chipping at Manectric, and of course... Talonflame, so it's worth dying to the HP Ice. And now, of course, Latios comes in, rocks are back up, something's going down. It's Bisharp, and he just goes for the Draco, not bothering with any Surf. So Manectric comes in, he really can't switch around it anymore, and he's just going to have to let his Latios go. So now the score is 4-3, and, with Ferrothorn weakened, so the Manectric is a huge threat, so how is he going to maneuver around it? Is he U-turning and then going to Rotom to sponge hits if it stays in, or either way he goes to Landorus, and he's going. So now look at how much it's paying off that he didn't U-turn on the first opportunity, because imagine if he had taken extra Rocky Helmet chip at this point, that would have been disastrous. So that move really, really, really paying off. And now here comes the Rotom. Ferrothorn being chipped is huge because now it really can't switch into it. And he doesn't even bother Volt Hydro Pumping or Will-O-Wisping or giving it spikes. Whereas a lot of players would have just been content with, alright, I'll burn it and wear it down and then Rotom versus the world pretty much. But no, he doesn't do that. He Volt switches once again and brings in Bisharp and gets his guaranteed KO. No dealing with spikes for Bisharp. No getting Leech Seeded. No getting knocked off. No losing leftovers. None of that. So here comes the Talonflame. And... he's not going to sack anything. He's shown Life Orb Bisharp, no Lumberry, so he can't stay in and knock off, which would be nice if he had it, but he doesn't, so he can't. So Rotom comes in, and now Talonflame's going to try to stall the Hydro Pumps. Looks like it doesn't even have an item, actually. It's itemless Acrobatics. So he was not a fan of Brave Bird Recoil. So he's going to try and stall out the Hydros, but it's a lot of damage, and even with lefties, this would be a tall task. So, I mean, Hydro accuracy notwithstanding, then Talon's going to drop to 3 pumps. And now here comes the Manectric, and it's going to Thunderbolt, just barely come up short. And so here's the thing, does he Lando? No, because then he's got the whole guessing game, and definitely made the right move not risking a Hydro accuracy. Just Volt switches, because now Bisharp Sucker Punch. What's he gonna do? Now X-Ray has to switch stall 8 times against Sucker Punch, or not switch stall, because he can stay in with Lando and go for Rocky Helmet, because for Stealth Rock. Sorry, he's not gonna go for Rocky Helmet. He's gonna go for Stealth Rock and try to waste the 8 Sucker Punches. He can't switch around 8 times because Manectric goes down to 44, 32, 44, 32, 20, and then 8. A little more because it's 0.5 each time, but he's got 4 more switches left, and Lando is even worse off, so he's going to have to throw in a Stealth Rock at some point, and he's got to just keep it going, and if at any point Bisharp attacks, the game is over. And Lando can't get too worn down either, because he has to stay alive so that Brofist's Lando doesn't just EQ Manectric at the end and win. So there's the first Sucker Punch, Defiant. Sucker Punching again on the Stealth Rock. Whoops, sorry. And yeah, there's Manectric again on the, giving him a second boost. Sucker Punch again. So he's down to 5 now. Here's Lando. Is he gonna, when's the Sucker coming? and Manectric comes in again on the sucker. He's not even going for this Stealth Rock, and he gets hit with a knockoff. And then in the chat, X-Ray says I'm slower anyway, but that's the game. So I have been yammering for a while, so thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the epic hype of World Cup and learned something maybe from the stuff going on in these games. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you next time.